Dwight Manfredi has always been a man who lives on the edge, a man who thrives on risk, confrontation, and that intoxicating adrenaline rush that comes with power and danger. But if there was ever a moment in Tulsa King where it seemed like he was finally evolving beyond that, it was at the end of season 2. For the first time, Dwight showed self-awareness. He admitted to Mitch that he, quote, can't leave well enough alone, and that he enjoys the chaos of being a gangster. That reflection made it feel like maybe, just maybe, Dwight was heading into season 3 with some maturity, some restraint, and the wisdom to play the long game. But here's the kicker. By the time we get into Tulsa King season 3, it becomes painfully obvious that Dwight hasn't changed at all. If anything, he slid right back into his worst habits, undoing the progress he made in season 2. Instead of seeing a more calculated mob boss with a steady hand, we're getting the same impulsive, hot-headed Dwight who makes as many problems for himself as he does for his enemies. And honestly, that's starting to feel like a major issue for the story. Let's break it down, because this backslide is glaring. In season 3, episode 2 especially, Dwight does so many impulsive things that it almost feels like deja vu. He can't control his temper with Bill Bevilacqua. And that blow-up doesn't just stay local. It trickles back to New York, alerting powerful people about his operations. That one impulsive reaction puts the entire distillery project under a spotlight, and let's be honest, if there's one thing Dwight doesn't need, it's more attention from the East Coast families who already have reasons to distrust him. Then we have his dealings with Cal Thresher. Instead of handling the relationship with some finesse, which he proved he was capable of at the end of last season, Dwight barrels right into it with too much pressure, too much aggression, and immediately turns the governor of Oklahoma into an adversary. This is classic Dwight, bulldozing his way through situations because he'd rather strong-arm than strategize. And while that might have worked back in New York when he was just a soldier following orders, it's sloppy and dangerous now that he's trying to build an empire of his own. But perhaps the biggest mistake and the clearest example of his impulsivity comes when he decides to threaten Jeremiah Dunmire. Now, Dunmire isn't just some random thug. This guy is psychotic, volatile, and fully capable of escalating things to a level Dwight hasn't dealt with yet. Dunmire insulted Dwight first, sure, but instead of brushing it off or finding a smarter way to retaliate, Dwight pokes the hornet's nest. He basically goes out of his way to provoke one of the most dangerous enemies he's ever had. It's reckless, and more importantly, it's repetitive. And that's the real problem here. This feels like the same story Tulsa King already told us in season 2. Think about it. Dwight meets an arrogant adversary. His temper gets the best of him. He lashes out, and boom, gang war. It's practically copy-paste storytelling, and it risks making Dwight look static as a character, which is the last thing this show needs if it wants to stay fresh in season 3. Now, I want to pause here because this is where a lot of fans get split. Some people love Dwight's hot-headed nature. They see it as part of his charm, the unpredictability, the fact that you never quite know what dumb thing he's going to do next. But here's the issue. Television thrives on growth. If a character keeps making the same mistakes without learning from them, the story stagnates. And that's exactly what feels like it's happening with Dwight right now. At the end of season 2, Dwight had one of the best arcs in the series. He recognized his flaws, admitted them, and actually tried to change. That moment where he partnered with Bill and Cal to take down Jackie Ming wasn't just about survival. It was about Dwight showing he could swallow his pride, control his impulses, and think bigger than just his next outburst. That was character development. That was the kind of growth that promised a more layered, more complex Dwight in season 3. But instead, season 3 opens by throwing that progress out the window. We're back to the same hot-headed Dwight who acts first and thinks later. But here's the frustrating part. It doesn't just make the character feel stuck. It makes the story predictable. Because if every conflict Dwight faces is just the result of him losing his temper, then the show is robbing itself of opportunities to explore more creative, layered narratives. Imagine how much more interesting it would be if his war with Dunmire wasn't sparked by Dwight's impulsiveness, but by a betrayal within his crew, or a calculated move from Dunmire that forced Dwight's hand. That would add new dynamics and push Dwight into situations where he had to evolve. Instead, we're left watching him repeat his old mistakes. And the longer that goes on, the more it undermines the idea that Dwight can actually grow as a leader. Now let's dig a little deeper into why this matters. Dwight is at a stage in his life where he needs to evolve if he wants to survive. He's not just a soldier anymore. He's not just carrying out orders for someone else. He's running his own operation. trying to balance the chaos of a criminal empire with the delicate threads of family, loyalty, and legacy. If he keeps running into every fight with fist swinging, he's going to lose everything. And more importantly, it's going to get old for us as viewers. There's also the fact that Tulsa King has already proven it can do better. Season 2 gave us glimpses of a Dwight who could be calculated, who could play the long game, who could put aside his ego to build something bigger than himself. That was exciting. That made the show feel like it was building towards something larger, an evolution from small-time mob drama into something more ambitious. But now, by reverting Dwight back to square one, it feels like the show is afraid to let him grow, afraid to let him change, and that could end up hurting its long-term storytelling. And here's the irony. Dwight himself admitted he enjoys danger. He thrives on it. That's part of his DNA. But he also admitted he knows this about himself and wanted to change. That self-awareness was the key. It showed he was capable of breaking the cycle. But now, it's like that realization never even happened. The Dwight of Season 3 seems to have completely forgotten the Dwight of Season 2, which doesn't just feel frustrating, it feels inconsistent. Let's not forget the personal side of this either. His daughter Tina is watching all of this unfold, and for Dwight, that relationship is supposed to matter. He wants her to see that he's not the same man he was. He wants her to respect him, maybe even accept him. But how is she supposed to believe he's changed if he keeps making the same mistakes? If anything, Tina's storyline loses weight if Dwight doesn't show any growth because it keeps her arc frozen in the same place too. So where does this leave us? Honestly, in a bit of a tough spot. On one hand, Dwight's impulsiveness is part of what makes him Dwight. It's his signature flaw, the thing that gets him into trouble and gives us those explosive, unpredictable moments the show thrives on. But on the other hand, if the writers don't start showing him evolving beyond this flaw, then the show risks feeling repetitive. And in Season 3, repetition is the last thing Tulsa King can afford. There's a way forward, though. Dwight doesn't have to stop being impulsive entirely. That wouldn't feel authentic. But the show needs to balance it with growth. Let him make mistakes, sure, but let those mistakes teach him something. Let him adjust, adapt, and surprise us with smarter, more controlled decisions when the stakes are at their highest. That way, his impulsiveness stays part of his character, but it doesn't define him completely. At the end of the day, Tulsa King Season 3 is still entertaining. Dwight is still a magnetic character, and his backslide into chaos does create tension. But if the series wants to keep us hooked long-term, it has to stop recycling the same beats. Dwight needs to face new challenges that force him to grow, not just relive the same conflicts over and over. Because as much as we love watching him kick indoors and ruffle feathers, it'll get old fast if that's all he ever does. And maybe that's the big takeaway here. Dwight Manfredi doesn't need to become a saint, but he does need to become smarter. If Season 3 can lean into that evolution instead of undoing it, Tulsa King could go from good to truly great. But if not, we're in for another season of Dwight being his own worst enemy. And eventually, that story will run out of steam.